Hi, and welcome to the Embouchure Project podcast, where we bring together the finest minds in the world to help understand the complex system that is the embouchure. The Embouchure Project represents a network of neurologists, scientists, physical therapists, psychologists, and pedagogues. The goal is to help define what a healthy embouchure is, what we can do to optimize the embouchure, and to deal with problems as they arise. A lot of our time will be devoted to embouchure dysfunction, from minor annoyances to debilitating forms of dystonia. We hope that all players, teachers and medical professionals will find this to be a rich resource. My name is Frankie Lacerdo. I'm a horn player with the West Australian Symphony Orchestra, founder of Brass Rehab, and on faculty as a teacher at the University of Western Australia. Thank you for joining us. We hope you find this to be informative and helpful. The Embouchure Project would like to thank the Australian Society of Performing Arts Healthcare and the Glenn Gould School for their support.
Joe Alessi is widely recognised as one of the world's finest trombone players. He's been Principal Trombonist with the New York Philharmonic since 1985. For the past 40 years, he's been travelling the world performing as a concerto soloist, chamber musician and festival guest. He's a renowned teacher at the Juilliard School and has taught countless students who have gone on to international careers. Here's our talk with the amazing Joe Alessi. Well, welcome back to the Embouchure Project podcast. My name is Frankie Lacerdo, and our guest today is none other than Joe Alessi, Principal Trombone of the New York Philharmonic. How are you going, Joe?
Good. How's everything there?
Good. Cold, but I won't say cold to someone from New York, but yeah. So, Joe, I've watched your interview on YouTube with the Principal Trombone of
La Scala.
La Scala, of course. Daniele Morandini, and it was fantastic. It's you've suffered from Bell's palsy, and you've come back, and Daniele also suffered from Bell's palsy and came back a month earlier than you, and you sit down and you talk through really openly, really in detail about your experience, kind of emotionally, physically. This for the listeners, this video is on YouTube. I just YouTube Joe Alessi Bell's palsy, and it comes up. And just as a continuation of that, I'd just love to hear your journey again, your story, and tell the listeners just about your experience.
Well, just to be clear, the root cause of my Bell's palsy was not that. It was shingles.
Yep.
Okay, and it's called Ramsey Hunt syndrome. Yep. So Justin Bieber had Ramsey Hunt syndrome. Somebody else recently, well known, had it. Anyway, so Ramsey Hunt syndrome is shingles in the ear. So I noticed my hearing was an issue one day, and then I had pain in my ear, and I thought it was just an earache or ear infection, but it quickly affected my cranial nerve and made it inflamed, and basically my face over 3 days just shut down, right side of my face. So it looks like Bell's palsy, and probably if you have to look at the medical definition of that of Ramsey Hunt syndrome, but it basically causes Bell's palsy. Is the exact same thing. Ramsey Hunt syndrome. It's when you look at so I started looking on the internet trying to figure out what was going on. and I came across this Ramsey Hunt syndrome description, and it said things like compared to Bell's palsy, it's harder to recover from, actually, more difficult. So that scared me. But
Dr. Google has no mercy, does it?
yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah, and so over 3 days or 3 or 4 days, I just lost control. Initially, I thought I was out of shape. My first thought, wow, maybe I'm not. And to be honest, if I ever feel that way again, and it's not Bell's palsy, I'm always in shape. So that I shouldn't even have asked that question, because I'm always ready. I'm playing all the time. So, and I could, certainly prepare a recital in one day if necessary. So anyway, but it wasn't that. So we were doing Pulcinella, and on the very last concert, I have basically lost control. Pulcinella, the highest note is a high A. So I could still play, but I was losing my high register. That was just shrinking. And after that last performance, I got through it, and it went fine. But it was horrible. I just couldn't wait to get home. Drove home, took up my horn, and tried to play some scales. And from the end of that performance that night to when I got home, I lost probably maybe an octave.
Wow.
And so I was trying to figure out, God, I'm out of shape, or no, something's I was going beyond that. It says something is horribly wrong. I need to change my embouchure. I need to make a change right now. And because I've changed my embouchure many times in my career.
Right.
Yes. And just minor adjustments, but some major. But so at any rate, I started looking in the mirror, and I tried to make my embouchure, and I couldn't make it. It was just, I couldn't control this side at all, and kept trying to play. And I just finally I just said, I'm going to bed. Maybe tomorrow will be better. As soon as I woke up the next day, I ran to the, not ran, but I just went directly to my practice studio and tried to play something, and I couldn't play a note. I mean, there was no way to make an embouchure. And I went right to the hospital, our local hospital, and sure enough, this Ramsey Hunt syndrome was, in fact, the diagnosis of the doctor there. And then it all made sense, what I was going through. I suspected that before, but I was hoping somehow it would, maybe if I got a good night's sleep, it would go away. But it was the course had already been set, and from there, I started reading about it. I tried to figure out what I could do, to help. Started talking to people. David Finlayson, our second trombone player at the Philharmonic, he had Bell's palsy when he first started in the orchestra. So I reached out to him. I reached out to Charlie Vernon, all my friends who have gone through this, and my hearing was horrible. I suffered hearing loss at that time. I pretty much gotten that back, but so I did a lot of tests, talked to doctors. I talked to Dr. Frucht, who's a dystonia, a famous dystonia guy here in New York. He was reassuring. He thought that I would recover from my symptoms and so forth. But nothing happened for a little over a month. There was a month that went by, and during that month or so, I tried acupuncture. heat treatment. Okay. A heating pad, sleeping on a heating pad on this side. And matter of fact, at the acupuncturist, they used heat treatment there as well. So, I can't say what really helped, but I'll go back. Right after I went to the hospital, they put me on all the protocols, medications, steroids, antiviral meds,
Yep.
So I took that, if you ever go through this, you got to go see a doctor right away. You can't delay. Because that's one thing it said over and over from the doctors, and also on Google and whatever you could find there. So you got to get the treatment within 3 days. And so pretty much that's when I did it. I might have been a day late or so, but I immediately got those meds. And anyway, so I did the treatments. I remember Doc Severinsen going through his issue with Bell's palsy, and he talked about using a tuba mouthpiece to maybe get it going or a bit. But I made sure I didn't do anything for a while, because I was told that if you do anything too soon, or you try to do anything too soon, you could cause further damage, and it could turn into a dystonia. So I think that's important, that you can't make the embouchure do anything until it's ready to do so. So, but I tried the tuba mouthpiece because you could make an embouchure and get a buzz, because the rim is so wide. It covers all the areas that are weak, basically. And so I did that. That was encouraging after 2 or 3 weeks of, on the sidelines. And then on Christmas Eve, so a whole month had gone by, really couldn't play at all, or nothing, couldn't do anything. And then
were you actively trying, or you were on rest?
I didn't try to play. The only thing I did was just on the tuba mouthpiece, just a little bit. I made sure I didn't do too much, but it was just kind of fun to make a little buzz in the very low register. So maybe there's hope for me to be a tuba player one day. We'll see. But things didn't really change until I spoke to Daniele Morandini, the person we just spoke of, and he just called me to say hello. It wasn't, he hadn't heard anything about what I was going through, and called me on Christmas Eve. We were driving up to Canada, and how are you doing? I explained my situation. He said, "Oh, you won't believe this, but I'm just now recovering from my issue, Bell's palsy, and you need to do this." So, and I wrote down all the information. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. One of my best friends just went through this, a great trombone player. And so he said to contact Dr. Rosé in Barcelona, Spain. And I did. As soon as I got up to Canada, I called him day after Christmas, or it might have been Christmas Day. I don't know, maybe the day after Christmas. And he interviewed me. He thought he could help me, and he gave me exercises. And he asked me if I could make a buzz, and I said, kind of. And he said, "Well, okay, that's all right." And these exercises were basically just facial, 20 or 30-second facial, holding your face in a certain way. So like this, you do that for 6 seconds or something like that. 6 seconds, 6-second holds, like this, or this, strange faces.
Yeah.
And you hold them for 6 seconds, off for 6 seconds, hold for 6 seconds, off for 6 seconds. You go through all these series of exercises, and I did them religiously. And you do them, I think, 2 or 3 times a day. So when I started doing that, I was really quite amazed how I was able to actually make these faces, and it got easier as I went along to with each day. And so I had another consultation, and we said, okay, now take the mouthpiece, and you can proceed to that. So those mouthpiece exercises were just buzzing in different places. And every time you do that exercise, those exercises, you don't do them in the same order. You do them in different orders, okay, to kind of confuse the mind in some ways. Okay, so he didn't say go to the normal place and just do that exclusively, because you don't want to do that. It's more about doing things that you've never done before with the buzz. So here's where I normally play. But he was saying, start over here. Now go over here. And go over here. Down. And go all over the place.
Yeah.
He says he didn't really care what it sounded like. He didn't care if I even made a sound. It's just move it around and do these types of exercises. So, and then he would say, okay, now move it around as you play. Right? This type of thing. And I was told that I spoke to somebody and they said, well, that's kind of a Arnold Jacobs thing, which is true. There's a video of him moving his embouchure. Say, I can play anywhere. Jacob said, I can play over here.
Yep. And,
he did it pretty well. And so I watched that video. But anyway, those were the recommended exercises. And I did that a lot. And I felt things were coming back after I did those exercises. It was quite quick process and progress. Excuse me. And by the time I got back home from vacation on January 2nd, I started to make my first sounds. And to my surprise, I was able to make my embouchure. I mean, I could even feel, just like a week before that, I kept looking in the mirror, and wow, I was able to make my embouchure, and it looked somewhat normal, So I felt I was coming out of this. And anyway, I don't really know exactly what it was that I did, whether it was the acupuncture or whether it was the heat treatment or
or the exercises,
but I think it was just a combination of everything that I did.
Yeah.
And I was very focused on doing this in a disciplined way.
Yeah.
And so when I first started playing, I didn't have, my high range wasn't very strong. I could play up there, but nothing felt strong, and the strength really didn't come back for another 3 to 4 months, 3 months, I would say 3 months of just working, getting back into shape. But I continued to do the therapeutic exercises for a while. I eventually stopped, but Daniele professes that he continues to do them. Maybe not all the time, but he continues to do them, and he feels like those really help him. even
Hmm.
even not as a getting back into shape, but just in general for your playing,
Yeah.
moving the mouthpiece around, and we use the same place all the time, you know.
Hmm.
And sometimes when we do, at least what he thought, and I agree with him, is when we use that same place all the time, that can wear out a little bit, and you have to go to another place, you know. And so we just spoke about, I've changed my embouchure many times, making small adjustments.
Hmm.
There could be some truth in, the reason why is because, hey, when you play in the same place all the time,
Hmm.
perhaps it gets, your muscles and whatever controls that gets tired and complacent or whatever, and we need to move it over here a little bit or down here or wherever. I'm not saying you need to go and do this now, but if there might be some truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting. Yeah. Start fresh somewhere new, a new home. Yeah. That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So I want you to take your mind back to that first month where really nothing worked. How would you have described it physically? Like, did you feel as though you were setting up and it just wasn't working, or could you feel like, was there numbness? Or I'd love to know, kind of from the inside out, what it felt like.
um well, yeah, because I you know there's people who have had Bell's palsy, and did you say you had it as well?
No, I had an overuse injury, so
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
just everything just
Okay.
let go. Um,
Got it.
A lot of our symptoms do sound actually quite similar, which is really interesting. But this is about you. So
Yeah. Well, anyway, the Bell's palsy type of thing, it's your face droops basically,
yeah,
and so I have pictures of me early on, or right as I went through it, because I conducted my trombone choir. I kept teaching, which was really interesting. Uh, usually I play in the lessons, but I couldn't, so I just did everything, verbally and with illustrations, and so it was very helpful for my teaching. But somebody took a picture of me, and yeah, it's just all drooping
mm,
to one side, and so you can't do anything. I mean, matter of fact, it's horrible for in my eye. Also, I wasn't able to close my right eye,
that's right.
so I had to wear an eye patch, and I'd use eye drops because your eye gets dried out.
Yep.
That was horrible, and I kept chewing food was horrible. You would bite your cheek because
Yep.
everything's crooked. You have
Mm,
to chew really slowly.
mm,
Um, anyway, so things like that. So it's just I was pretty down in the dumps.
yep.
This, you know, physically, there's nothing you could do. There's
Yep.
nothing that no matter what, every day I'd look in the mirror and just look the same.
Yep.
It
Yep.
took a whole month before there was a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
And I thought it would go on forever. I thought
Yep.
I was going to be one of those people in the description in Google that, some people just don't recover from this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's true. And so, yeah. So
Yeah.
I was, that's my life. It's my life. It's what I've done warming up. And my father was, a brass player, and his father was a brass player. My brother's a brass player. It's a religion. Some people say when they retire after so many years, they're not going to play anymore. I can't do that. I know I'm
Yeah.
going to keep playing because it's
Yeah.
a religion. I enjoy turning on the television, watching a baseball game or football game, and warming up in front of the
Yep.
TV. That's just my life. That's what I've done every single day.
Yep.
And I don't know. I would, and I enjoy the whole I don't want to say the sport of it, but just the conditioning and trying to get that ultimate resonance on your horn and the buzz and the efficiency. I love that every day. I mean, every day, just to go off topic a little bit, when I warm up, I mean, I used to think that when you first play a note in the morning, that it had to feel and sound perfect. And some days it can do that. Okay. But to be honest, many days, and this is before also my injury, it feels like you don't know what you're doing, and I used to panic about that. I used to, oh my God, I need to quit, but what I find is that when you first play in the morning and it feels horrible, or you can't even, maybe you can't even get a sound right away or whatever. I think the process is of that, going through that and trying to sound good over 10 minutes or something like that is fascinating. And I think that's actually what allows you to, so I guess what I'm saying is that when you feel horrible and it doesn't sound right in the very beginning, sometimes those days you sound great, that you late, 10 to 15 minutes later or whatever, you can sound better than you've ever sounded before.
Yeah.
So I think there's a process that all brass players have to calmly go through when in a case where things don't feel great, or maybe you overplayed the day before or whatever, and everything feels like garbage. There's a process how you remedy that in 10 minutes. So I've learned a lot, from all the years, and not to panic, to calmly go about doing exercises or warming up, avoiding a certain register when you warm up, is knowing where you sound best and expand from there. Things like
be
that.
kind to yourself. Yeah, it's refreshing to hear you say that. Yeah, someone like you to say that it's okay to warm up in front of the TV and be kind to yourself when you're doing this.
Yeah, not to panic,
Yeah.
because if So anyway,
I feel like just going back to that interview that you had, and when you were talking about your experience, I feel like a turning point even in your voice and in your journey was when Danielle, when your great friend Daniela said, like, "Oh, I've been through this as well," and as no one plans an injury, and no one, I feel like more people are talking about it now, but I'm sure you could shed light on this. In past years, it's not something that was so talked about, and so when a friend does come out and say, "Oh, that happened to me," like you said, it's like, oh, it's a bit of a relief because you feel like someone gets it. So maybe you could talk a bit about that, the mental side that
sure,
that came out of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I just want to clarify, because you said this was an injury. I think I wouldn't say it was an injury.
No,
It was a virus that I had, which caused, I think a loss of use, or is a loss of the muscles, and the cranial nerve was I guess it was an injury, because the cranial nerve gets injured. So would you say that's true?
Yeah,
I was trying to
I get
figure
what you're
out.
saying. Yeah,
Like,
saying an injury almost puts like a guilt on it, but yeah, it's not something that was your fault, that was caused by anything.
I've had injuries before, real injuries, where I bashed myself with the hammer. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I was hammering something and the hammer ricocheted the wrong way and it hit me right here. And that was a horrible injury, where I was out for, a whole month. So, my father is a brass player, and so he coached me through that. But getting back to you asked me about what Daniele.
just more about the emotional side of that point where someone else has been like that you're able to bounce that off. Yeah.
Well, before I knew this about Daniele, I was taking a walk one day and I called Charlie Vernon, and it was very, very encouraging when I spoke to him, and he just felt I was going to come out of it, and how long it took him and so forth. So everybody that I talked to said I need to have time. I can't be impatient, and so I was, in my mind, I was saying, okay, I'm going to sit there, and I probably won't be able to play for 4 months at all. And so when I spoke to Daniele, it was, it was a real change there for me. It gave me some hope that there's somebody out there that can really help me, because I went to all the best doctors in New York.
Yep.
And they just said you got to wait, but nobody really in New York had heard of, none of the doctors had heard of Dr. Rose. I believe, and also none of them recommended therapy, in a structured way. So when Daniele told me about this, it gave me a lot of hope, and I immediately went to action on that. So I think if that didn't work, doing the therapy, and I would have really just, I mean, the emotional part is, you cry, and you have horrible thoughts about things, that I have, I'm going to have to do something else. I'm going to have to retire early. I'm going to have to, I'm worthless, whatever, things like this. All these things go into your mind, and it's not fun at all. So, but as soon as I spoke to Daniele, he really gave me a lot of hope, and somebody who had just been through it, and said, you got to call this guy, and you got to do the things that he's recommending, and I think it's really going to help you, and it did. So I'm very lucky, because I was really only away from playing in public for about 4 or 5 months, 4 months. Okay. Wow. I was playing. It took me 3 out of those 4 months, to get my strength back. And my first thing back with the orchestra, I didn't plan it this way, but I got COVID as well, just before I wanted to go back to the orchestra, and I was going to play something pretty easy like Dvorak 8th. But it ended up, I was delayed, and so I came back with Schumann 3 and 4. So and so that was, but so I went from a very low point to a very high point when I came back and started playing the Chick Corea concerto when I went over to I think it was Lisbon to play over there. Because that's the other thing. I had to cancel a lot of solo appearances, and some of those were terrific opportunities, and I just couldn't do them. So there were my wife and my family and all my friends, my former teachers. They all, I got on the phone with them, and David Finlayson was extremely helpful. We went out to lunch right away. He saw me. He said, "I know exactly what you're going through," and so, to be honest, to have these people in my life, current and past friendships, who actually went through this stuff, was very helpful.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask just about the exercises that you were doing, and you talk about just focusing on the process of what you're doing, and so not so much about the result. And so, like, not listening to the sound, or so I guess in pedagogy we hear so much of that. It's all about sound, or always listening to the sound. That's good for a healthy player, but going through something like this, it's very different, isn't it? And I just want to hear your experience with the kind of technical side of just allowing yourself to maybe not sound your best, but
Okay.
knowing that you're going through something deeper.
Well, yeah, Dr. Rosette, he just said, don't worry about what it sounds like. Don't even worry if you can't buzz, in one of these positions. He said that many times. So that was kind of helpful, because, okay, I don't have to worry about the sound. This is a doctor telling me this. And so I didn't really evaluate anything at all. And I didn't expect to be able to play anything until, because I didn't bring my trombone on vacation. I didn't bring it up to Canada. I brought a mouthpiece, and that's it. A tuba mouthpiece and my mouthpiece. But so I didn't know what to expect when I got back from vacation, but I had a feeling that I was going to be able to play again, just from everything starting to look correct, more correct. But yes, it was something that even when I started to play back home, yeah, it didn't sound great, but I felt I could sound great, again, and so I where a month earlier you couldn't even make a sound, there was impossible. So I took any progress to heart, and didn't really evaluate in detail, about my sound. I just wanted to make a buzz. I wanted to play a B flat, and do it relatively comfortably. So anyway, the muscles started to reawaken. The connection, the cranial nerve started to work again, and anyway, so yeah, it was important for me not to get ahead of myself, and just do one day at a time. That's all. That's my motto in life anyway. One day at a time.
Yeah. Would you say that this experience has changed your trombone playing now, and your teaching even? Do you feel like what did you learn from this experience?
Well, when I do play every day, I'm very grateful to play a note. So, and I, yeah, it's a gift. I mean, I think I'm more appreciative of each day when I wake up and I can play my instrument, because it can be taken away, that quickly. The shingles thing, a lot of people say, how do you get Bell's palsy? And well, a lot of people don't really know, but it just happens sometimes. But the shingles thing is, that's something. If you've had chicken pox, then you have that virus in your system. It's called zoster, I think it's called. Anyway, herpes zoster virus, I think it's what it is. But it's the same thing that causes chicken pox. So if you've had chicken pox, then you have that virus in you, and it can be activated at any time. There's a thing called Shingrix, a medication that you can. It's a vaccine against shingles, and it says over 90% effective. Well, I actually had the shingles vaccine. I still got shingles. So
Wow.
yeah. And you know, so anybody can get that at any time. And some people it goes into their eye. Some people it's just a rash on the side or an itching kind of thing or horrible feeling somewhere on
Yeah.
their body, right? But my friend had it, went into his eye, he almost went blind. So um so if it happens to go into your ear, well, it could definitely cause the same thing that I've had. So
Mm.
so anyway, you have to really, I would say, uh, what changed for me was well, I'll be honest. Right before this all happened to me, I had discovered some new ideas about playing,
Mhm.
um, um, about just air to vibration and the way that I blow and the way that I set up and so forth. And I was feeling quite encouraged about my playing, and and then it gets everything shut down. So
Mm.
I actually, when I started playing again, I tried I tried to keep those same concepts going that I was developing, and so I think it just made those uh, concepts even stronger,
Yeah.
in my playing, and so I'm um, when I go to work, we have 10 o'clock rehearsal. I used to just get in the car, buzz my mouthpiece, get to work, do a warm up. Maybe if the traffic was bad, I got a 15-minute warm up. And what I do now is I warm up before I get in the car. And I want to just spend quality time. Uh, you know, examining my breathing and getting my buzz correct and getting my air to vibration correct. And so I do that, pretty disciplined about that. So I just wake up earlier and
Mm.
and spend time at home, going through my exercises. And my exercises also, I don't do the same order of things. I don't
Mhm.
follow a book. I have they're all up here, and I kind of just switch them around and try not to
Mm.
do the same thing every day.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Anyway, but I'm very appreciative to be able to play a note
Yeah. No,
every
that's
day,
great.
every day.
Yeah. As someone who had a career-ending injury but came back from it, you come to this point, don't you, where you have to think that it's taken away from you, isn't it? And then you're like, what am I going to do now? Like, what's my identity? Did you have that moment thinking, I'll never play again? Like, what
Oh
would
yeah.
I do?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I love to teach, so I know I still could be a great teacher.
Yep.
And that actually saved me because I said, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I had all my students to take care of,
Hmm.
and I really took care of them. You know, um, so it made me a better teacher, like I said, because I couldn't play. I had to
Hmm.
explain everything in detail, and
Yeah.
I would do that anyway, but I could always reach for the horn. But
Hmm.
now you can't. Couldn't reach for the horn, so you have to continue explaining and singing and showing people with shapes and drawing things on the chalkboard or whatever. Whatever you can do to get the concept across to the student. Um, that I had to hone my skills even more. So
Yeah.
so yeah, what else would I do? That's a good question. I always thought I would be a truck driver if I couldn't play the trombone. But whatever. That obviously my wife wouldn't like that. So uh, so I was I've had other friends who've had to stop playing. Warren Deck, my friend who had dystonia, and he's still one of the greatest brass pedagogues we have today. So, and I think he's enjoyed it all this time. He's really enjoyed teaching. So, he's a real positive person, and all the students love him. And I send my students to Warren occasionally. So anyway, I kept saying to myself, Frankie, that I was so thankful that this didn't happen in the very beginning of my career. If my children had just been born, we just bought a house or whatever, I would have gone crazy. I would have worry. Sometimes I'm a little bit of a worrier, and I think that would have been very tough on me. Here I've been playing in the orchestra. Well, when that happened, it was like 36 years playing in the orchestra. And I was also willing to accept that I would have to stop, and I could have handled that, but I'm very, very happy to come back, very appreciative, and I try to enjoy myself more playing, that, because I know it could, I know what it's like to have it be taken away from you. So.
Well, it's I really appreciate the honesty, and that you're talking about this so openly, and I know it's going to help a lot of people, and it's been really inspiring to hear your story and your reflections on it, and just wanted to thank you for coming on to the podcast and having a chat.
And you're 100% back.
Yeah, my injury was about 10, 11 years ago. Over the space of 2 weeks, just couldn't play. And it started in the middle register, then pitch dropped, and a lot of similar symptoms actually, just to muscles just letting go. It was just an overuse, and for me, it was about 6 months of rehabilitation, learning how to form an embouchure again, and strengthening the muscles again, and learning what the roles of the different muscles are. But I went to a doctor as well, but a physio, a lecturer in anatomy at a university here in Australia, and she taught me how to play again from scratch, which in itself is a miracle. That she'd been researching this for 25 years, but yes, yeah. So now I'm playing back better than I used to, but it's just fascinating that something neurological, and something that comes from an illness like yourself, has so many similarities to an injury. So while I'm comparing it to an injury, it is different. But similar to you, I collapsed and cut my jaw open. I bruised some of the nerves going up to my lip, and they call it neuropraxia, where you bruise a nerve, so you don't sever it, but 2 months of numbness, and I couldn't hold water in my mouth, and it sounded similar to your experience, with you just know it's not going to work. It's like, so yeah. I think yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
No, I was going to just ask you a general question about because I feel like brass players these days talking a bit more about issues, but I have a feeling, or from what I understand, 20, 30 years ago, this is not something that was spoken so much about.
Right. Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my father talked about a guy that he worked with at the Met way back. His name was Earl Levitt. And Earl woke up one morning, he couldn't play anything, and back then, they didn't have all the medical research or experience. And so back then they just called it, losing your lip. Yeah. And one day, and they all tried to help him. I mean, who knows what Earl had? He could have had dystonia, and dystonia is very different than these injuries you and I have had, because many times you can't come back. There are cases where people come back. John Dixon at all?
No.
John is an LA horn player. He was diagnosed with dystonia, and he actually relearned how to play. But Philip Smith, our first trumpet player, had dystonia, and he still can play, but he just can't do the things he used to do.
Sure.
He's tried. He continues to try every day to get that back, but it's a real struggle. Warndek, he's on the sidelines with dystonia. So anyway, but I remember my father talking about this guy, and nobody knew what it was. He just lost his lip, and could it have been an injury? Maybe it could have been dystonia. Maybe. I mean, we don't know. It was happening in the 1950s. So we're lucky now because we have real doctors and the place in Spain is Institute for Art Institute of Art, something like that. It's for dancers, anybody who's in the arts that has a physical issue. Okay. Dancers, actors, musicians, all kinds of musicians, and they have people there who have experience with this. So to be honest, I've had students and some other professionals who've had other issues, even the stutter issue, where you try to play and you can't play, the stutter issue. So, and they have people there that know how to help people with that type of situation. So my student went to them, and I think it helped him. How do you explain that stutter issue? I mean, I've never had it myself, but I can't imagine not being able to take your horn and do that. But there's people out there that have that issue.
They refer to they compare it to the yips in golf. So golfers get this as well.
I have the yips myself when I play golf. Yeah.
Well, it's been great to chat to you, and I just want to thank you so much for your time. And
hope to meet you in person one day.
I'll come to New York. Come get one of those. What do they have? It's like a kebab on the street there. But there's one really famous one.
Oh, okay.
That I went to. We had to line up for a long time. Anyway, we'll get a kebab.
Wow. Okay.
We'll get some meat. Great. Fantastic. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Embouchure Project podcast with me, Frankie Lacerda. The strength of this project is our network, so please go to theembouchureproject.org to sign up for our mailing list, follow us on Instagram, and join our group on Facebook. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us at info@theembouchureproject.org. We look forward to hearing from you.